Dorje Janje De Lo Naroda Maraba Mela Jije Gamboba Adeza Jiza Gunje Gamaba Nyajunji Jubanza Nanda Nandada Zaza Barade Robazo Zala Zaja Jila Nibe Nyame Rongo Daboga Jila Zorwa Nezoga Jila Mana Nazana Namda Zenjela Yela Ganje Gamba Zamba Zena Gala Jaye Me Bada Zende Da Jube Ganjela Nyinga Yemba Meba Zenjela Mugu Ganje Gowa Zamba Minga De Ganje Bela Mala Zowan De Be Ganjela Jume Mugu Jewa Zenjela Yeme Ganje Yezabaye Gaya Dove Mozo Made Maju De Ganjo Be Ganjela Gonzalo Dan Rawa Zenjela Nam Dong Juga Zambayim Jayamayin Jayan Jarwala Magaroban Jare Ganjela Ngorde Yeme Doba Zenjela Dramen Juje Balalon Juje Zadalam Jeyonde Radone Adorje Jange Gomba Nyodo Yo Lama Rumboje, Dage Beme de Yone, Karin Jimbo Gone Jizong, Gozon Doje, Ngudo Zardo Zo. All la soda. Children about Samala, Ningon Dele, Kiata, Dedan Lindo, Sanjo Sim Tsisambaga Gone, Simbarkios, Telata, Kang Simbar Savane, Mazota, the weekend la. Corolodo Nabaye Goni Kyokori, Tendu Tam Lodo Nabaye Goni Tamjun Hikawa, the Simataba Nikondo Son and Coroni make Tela Nani Dark Coroni make Jerky Bata, Sarah Sosu Donha, Shiaba Nantini, Dang Song Song with Donhate, Song somebody, then the Tenny can't have the man John David. Shabdu Kyokan Tening, also Sudro Chizu, so the Tawat telling or Sari Teanki, Chimbo and Sari. Then the Tas have rather those also don't having in some subject don't have song send that dendro. Tanging some subject don't have yori, that dendro some lion don't have yori. Then the mud don't have it, tak on the cart Tana his somebody and that tele has a touch, Gohamado Pajar. So what that that's our donha Chimbo Yella, Jaganam Jagadonha, that Tata Tenda, Dada Travan Trija Doba, the Nila, Tripa Tarja Doba, the Mother Tota Papa Donhar, and Doba Tota Mabab Donhar Lasso, but it then Dalijin Donhar Samja Machabangaso, Tangaso Hako Yamari, my Donharte. So what did it? Teni Lala Donhar Kanda Orisina, Tal Lam Potong Mare, Lama in Tapzug Donhar Zone, Tan Tori Niba. Lama in Tapzug Dongar, that Koran so Tse Katsi Ringbo Neko, Ti Tse Dela, the Nyama Tapalaco, let Hadog Pindo Corit and Pinjo, then take Tapzu Kona, saying the Pasang Jonking and Drevo Tondala, Lalan Tapzu said the Koran so Tadog tin Tapzu Kona, the Tundane, then Macet to region the Zogo, that tendery. That Lama in Tapzug Dongar Zone and so that take the Lauko, the Pachatang, so take Jebati, Nana Zena, Starcha Huike, Trakin Trapaven, Yori. That Latam in Tapzu in the Kela Trajan, Su in the Capsula, then Gotham, the Wabin Dream, the Wood Rowan Chora with Rezarguni, Tanta Jamso Tamji, called Track. Tendru tapero ta tendru marja chago tendru ke tan thapchu win set tela kora nyama chek da chichu karma chek la khomba mele ke ten thapchu khona la tun de na donghar nyong ko le ri lama yin thapchu ke donghar zon te ana ye ga lam phodong ke donghar zon la se ya de la che ren bo de pe ja chin re la se ya de pe ta ka re zo lo la chereng se Tapi hal lepas tahu nyawa ke lag ceci dan nyawa ke ceci, ngaso ke jadi di empat tiang nanggiri lag tapi cerengbo, lag cerengbo zone, lelah hijau ngatendu ke, teni di cede lah pe dekin, kipa, sosok kangla kangdu, dewa jeng kita kopa nanggiri, oli lab guna lab coba nanggiri kenjekting kita, thomong kengudup zogo, natan jek tendu ke deci koran sola ori. Tene meto ke charba je sonra ta soso kangla kandu je sonra tene ta nan nyim chiwen tene kormo yola tene ko dancing dan singing da te ana ge ga donghar zon tsawani ni mere donghar zo je semto konan le manyong da o tenru ke deji ke tunda ne de indu tene nyima je lam podong ge donghar zo tene nyima je la tene koran so ta hyama denge ngarani tene ta koran so ge chechi de zo Koran so ke sore wan thang da wo de zo de kapsala teni ta nga so de donghar che sa console yore ta te sore wan thang de cha sang se in de kapsa che che de zo de teni koran so lo bo la chma po je da jing zho je da me do ge jin cha tham ji ning ba cha ya da teni zho bo zho mo ro ba tham ji da na ma tham ji ke cha sang ke thi la me yong je de console chma ngi ba po ho li da zu de so la jing pe thi la jar mo ho li ko yo tham ji chma ngi ba tan Teni teni de so ke ta choran ta chen pu kari hyama deng chen ni teni choran chen pu ne lara nga so mayor ton ro ne tambe chu dom ne layor da yar jewa lin bar hyo je jewa lin ne giman jar jo li molam de ke yen so teni jong ro khor kari teni koran zu ti la su che dung ki ra ka ma ri teni dung ki mara de ta ma ta de nga ra kan je ho li nyar yil chen ro ko li je sa nyar wa de me la ne la ngong chi ke cha sang dan rang gang de la ta koran son thong ko le kan ne chen ro da te ten thong de ten donghar ta jikta ta ka yulen deba ke donghar samje ma ta won photong donghar sa tam pho ke tong donghar denim pho de sayam pho de tong de nyar yor tong ro ko ro ti donghar de chilen deba yulen deba nga zo ma ge hi ma ta ba ge ten ke loyal le ma khong wa ge donghar ke console nyong ko yor teni ten de ta ro kho ko teni dam ra che te la teni donghar nyong cheng pho de teni nyar yor la pho ro ko ta nyar wa la lo ka chi se du ko le che lo ta console gewa yo ma re wa ta teni ten de nyar yor la teni nyar yor de cha de la yang ta me yor la che ko na ye che wa che lin ka re ta ten ru che ne ta ko ra ja nan khor ne teni donghar ta rek do ge donghar ta den ngi song som na te donghar yo yo ka re te den ro la ta ma la ya dewa pche sa me re ta donghar ma to je ge dewa yo ma re tebe cha ta kong de khuba na ge ma nga so ge ta nang la dewa re na ko le te don de ko donghar to je dewa je phachar hidai je mathawan dawari ta nang la dewa je chongzam nga so la le ko de dong de ke je de ni lan jon de jorwa donghar sam je ma cha ba ta nga so le nyong yam ba de o le de de ta so chama la ta nga so ge de ha kwa ge to ni de ni bang xin ko la 다다 뜻서 차상 동하를 연바데 담보 뭐 희네 되니 뜻서 차상 데 반데 되니 나랑 그 잠불에 가래 드롭고 다 하고 온데로 되는데 디치들랑 가서 데 로데 장고래 되다 제 니베 차는 가서래 닝게 제베 치들이 삼바데 닝게 제베 치다 삼바데 닝게 때라 가래데 제허스나 당 가서 그 되니 제들링 감성 레도 그 코란 데인 담데니 제데지 차상 소소 다다 공니 히바에는 가서 그 파마 베주 세마냐 뭐 자와니는 메와로 파마 심지 대다 담제더니 닝게 체메바게 젠도네 델라데니 닝게데 젠 거들 사조그 셈그 컴퍼던로는 사조그 셈 주마마인 바레 줄레 젠 거들이야 디 치던 가서 그다 레도그 동할때라 삼노 땅네 로튼르 장고로
Good afternoon, all my Dharma friends. Please listen with the motivation of bodhicitta. We are concerned here with the four thoughts that turn the mind from samsara, of which we have completed our exploration of the first two. Within the third, the problem of samsara, we have finished looking at both the suffering of samsara in general, or generic to samsara, and of the sufferings specific to the 6 states. We completed looking at the 3 lower states or lower realms. I'm going to go pretty quickly this afternoon because we want to leave, if possible, an hour for questions. The 3 higher realms, the human realm, the Asura realm, and the Deva or God realm, are also states of suffering. We inhabit the human realm and are quite aware of how miserable it can be. Ubiquitous to human experience are the 4 rivers of suffering that I mentioned this morning: birth, aging, sickness, and death. But we also suffer in countless other ways, such as through being unable to encounter friends, encountering enemies, not getting what we want, and losing what we have. The second of the higher realms is the realm of Asuras. Sura is a synonym for Deva, or a god, so Asura means non-gods. Sometimes people call them anti-gods. The Asuras are born in their realm as a result of jealousy. And so their entire lives are founded in this. From the beginning to the end of their long lives, they fight, wage war against the Devas out of jealousy over the fact that the roots of the wish-fulfilling tree grow in the Asura realm, but the fruit of that tree is only available to the Devas who live on top of Mount Meru. They fight at so constantly and so viciously that it's said that when the Devas are slaughtering the Asuras, their heads fall off the top of Mount Meru and bounce down on the steps at its base. And so much blood is spilled that the water or oceans surrounding Mount Meru turn red with the blood of the Asuras. So their main sufferings are the suffering of unsuccessful warfare against the gods and violent death as a result. Now, the devas, or gods, live very, very long lives. For example, the lowest of the god realms, the four great kings, one day in that realm is equivalent to 50,000 human years. Going up, the second one, the 33, one day is 100,000. And then above that, free from fighting, because it's in the sky above Mount Meru and the Asuras can't get there, one day is equivalent to 200,000 human years, and so on. So they live very, very long lives. And for almost all of their life, they're seemingly very happy. They're having a lot of fun. They enjoy all sorts of pleasure. The realms of the gods are almost like a pure realm in the sense that they can immediately have whatever they want: food, flowers, petals descending from the sky, and so on. And they basically spend all their lives singing and dancing and playing and cavorting. However, 1 week before their death, and that's in their time, so in the case of the realm of the four great kings, that would mean 200,000 years in our time. In the case of the 33, would mean double that, and so on. So 1 week before their death, they start to stink. Now, devas don't have body odor, or if they do, it's very, very pleasant. But 1 week before their death, they start to reek and stink. And they also start to sweat. The flower garlands that they wear wilt for the first time. Now, the other devas recognize that that particular deva is going to die in a week. So they tell them, say, you are going to die in 7 days. Hopefully you'll be born human and then do good in the human realm, and then you can be reborn here and rejoin us. The problem is that devas have some degree of limited supercognition. So they can actually see directly where they are going to be reborn. And regardless of where it is, it's going to be a lower state than what they enjoy in that Deva realm. But most commonly, they're reborn in hell. And the reason is that they've used up all their available good karma, being devas, and probably not done any good, engaged in any virtuous actions while being devas. So their negative karma comes to the forefront, and they fall to hell. The suffering of that deva in those 7 days, which, thousands and thousands of years in our time, the suffering of their impending death and downfall is said to be worse than any other suffering in all of samsara. It is a state of horrific fear that we cannot imagine. They know what's happening, what's going to happen to them, and there isn't a single thing that they can do about it. So the point of all this is that there is no true happiness in any samsaric realm. Obviously not in the lower states, visibly not in the human realm, and certainly not in the asura realm or even the deva realm. Everything that we cling to as a condition for happiness will change and will cease to be what we think it was. The point of all of this contemplation is twofold, Lama said. First of all, if you recognize that all samsaric states are fundamentally states of misery and suffering, you will make sure not to be born in them. The second benefit of this contemplation is it will help you develop compassion and bodhicitta. Through the contemplation of how much suffering all of these beings, all of whom have been your parents countless times, are undergoing.
Holas, teniteri. Tateke kochujavi, teni so ke deep raw leg course re tata tender some tantina take jabatamji la ingitor Georgia tola yapota josari tasonjar. Tenita le saya de tangone tane nga so de namba sanje pare leg jisen rankori le zangi jisa karna jisa le karna te lowa me pari le karna te lowa me pari yichir mina nga so ge chu zawani nin msipan rawo ri drop kamari lemde le yichi chin jepsa malare pa sangje rewa ten de kona le chetu dikpochi sa ne chemi telechani keje teni la ya ta ngara lutin dai thoni nyawalan rojama to de zawani ne mi nge tendre ke mama bo si kya thi samne ke le tel yi chi che na lama marpa lo za na lama te ne lutin tela teni ko dropa nyam ni se ne sangje zong ta malare ba phogu malare ba zong nga so ta nga so phogu namjar ba chembo jaga tripchin thamjilan dream dal tablika jag tripchin la sari zogana zopile tindrike ke sonrwa ta jana mar khore te chupa gona malare pa na ye gori zon malare pa la khelin ko re ta tindru 이게 손이 될 렘레를 이치지네 공상계리 마도 렘레를 이치 마치나 공상계로 거 말이 말아래 봐도 파자마다나 수요 말을 말이라 마야보 이렇게 만바데 타기 추리 데코 렘레게 핀다선로 공 좋아 톰르지데 호텔이 텐데 테라다 빵자 먹게벨레다 드브자 게벨레다 탐지 레 염바 레레 염바 코 삽지 남바 카케게 돈고니 띵요리 텐데 당 빵자 먹게벨레 세야데 가서다 먹게 쭈보 빵고리 드브자 게벨레 세야데 게 데니 게와죠 드롭고리 다 먹게와죠 데빵 탑소나 데니 당가서 게 텔레사사 먹어반다오리 데니 먹게죠 빵차네 게와죠 보디 거든 정 차리 참이게 송 먹게죠 빵 게와죠 송 데니 라라치 마고바리 게와죠 랑기건가데 저런 콜리 데니 다 먹게죠 세야데 가렐리케 거르신 당가서 그때 남조 히히 가리 데니 르치 먹게섬 나치 먹게게 예제 먹게섬 다티 먹게와 쪼보데 먹게 쪼보다 참이 나라서 파세바다 마세바다 자정바세바다 로봉가 깔랑이 섬가 찬점바 라서바 데히에 거들이 다 도소데데 참이 나데 베 용용리 야나야 먹게 쪼데 나서게 다 드전데 바이오티식 주마다나 나서게 다게 디켈랭이 바데 사사 칼라요리 다 루저고네 먹게와 쪼데 so jebada mazembelembada mazangwa joba sumde korang nga soke pacharte ge zozo karwa de so joba seriade ta de so chepta kare na ji jaba de so jeba zori nga so jetang so joje de so chama la chachum nyamba ge yonra na ta ko de la ye samba joran tharthok changma changa gone ke ja he ko le re de yana da soji chadu soji chalre ta kolong ge toni nge soju maze samba mina ta de la sokyu gen debate name de ja 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 ge nyong ko le soji ga de ta de la nga so ge soli de ja 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 ge nga so jar go le de de lu jo go ne soji ma go ba ga chi na sam no tang thoba re tendri chi ri 데니 딱 송자 송도면나 다다데 제레도 코 다다 예삼 저와 타도 창소나 동바된 가르쳐바리 코 자와니네 메리 딱코 다데 창규 그 개성이나 송자 샤자 히에코리데 다 dorna pamba yada lama chok sam la so ba hie ko le te di na ti ni nga zo ge che chang ju ge long ze cha de che pmi chi ko le che sam no re tong de le che ndam da zu ga na te ni ge long ge dong ba tong ri se kan da zo ge ja hyuk chen bo hie ko re bu ge da so ga ne na ya na de chi bo ma re pamba yada lama chong sam de na de pamba yada zo ri da ngai so da pamba yada da lama chong sam pon dar sam ji ni ze ja de ju ni ko de ge song za de pa kyo da de ta ring bo ge ja ri cha ge cha ba ri de pamba yada song go de pamba yada na de ni da so ju ba da ji bo se ya na ya sam ja wa ta do chang so na ge long ge song za cha ri da gang o ma ri 대나 얘가 가서 동바 휴게래나 동바 동리 대면나 대 소지 바게 단 레베데 자자자게 니바 찡게 뇽고들이 소링게 레베데 대리 소지 바다 대니 마젠발라와저디 다데 거베제데리 마젠발린제들은 잠부 초바다 타코 찡 초비네 탑단 잠보근 초발라서 바 샤사고니 히에코레 마젠바다 가서 거베제데라리 거베제데 가세나다 거세 마성어 토랍 거세고 마성어 토랍 다다다게 뜻을 라바르도 거데 야고 사마리 르저고니 데다 소주바 마젠벨림바 마창와 주바세야데 다가주 마창와 주바세야데 다고 다다 보니 자보게 다다 메치짱마 주도 대 건첨자니 가서 다 gem니 그 송사리 다 게롱 게철롱 그 동바이나데 게롱 게마다 대게 gem니 파마다 게롱 파마 대거 게철 파마 대거에나 송고야 그 여야리 대나 마창와 주서야데 소소게 자다 맘바살라 드로네 데네 던르세야 코르테로 마창와 주서야리 다 대 코르테라 카체이나 잡잡 고호리 다테 리저 고네 머게와 섬 땡아가 고네 머게와 섬 야데 잔세야다 다 잔다 잔 쳔보다 잔 총어 잔 파파존 어리 잔 쳔보데 메치라메 잔리 다 동바 동지게 자와데 메치라메 잔세가리 망체규데 라마 탐제 라마 트라와 망체규데 추드바 보다 메치라메 잔데 하장 망보리다다 추드바 보데 가레 망보리세나 라맘 통링 엔通 레맘 통링 에레 사마 탑링 아 톱송 ngongkhima khale ngala ngongkhin charson se ya zoya la hajang ne ja gawori da lama trawa se ya te da dino ne tengsang ge tu la tan mangbo kha hajang ge mangbo ri jamda ge ngosong ge chi to yongda ge ngosong ge chi to teni labar de yongda tam je la la nje se ya hie ya rawa ta teni ngongkhi hie ya rawa tan ri hi ge de ko hi ge yu na mi na de yo ra ka wa ti yo de ra go ra tengsang da ti yo chi to ta tan ri we na nga so so ge dong ba mi la zo yo ko da 다때 탑 교복을 가리마도 정보든 장보든 그 가마리 다 대게 청소 대게 가시 솔라칸 겐던 그 대정도 그나 다때 배 야보 말이니 봐 쳔보리 대인도 전 쳔보 먹줄라면 전 세야데 대리 사마탑레 탑제선다 다다도 다든지 참참서 용거리다 드바보 냠니 센도 그 뜻소라 다 곰자도 곰텔라 gomjadon samsamso gomtela parta de khanenda che gomsona chengong chin de chao char theban rawa ta ching thong theban rawa la charandu ko sarvachani ta tela tin teni chomba chona charse pari o danga cheng mandawar cha chari sanjen rawa cha chari nge khi hedon thongdo san teni dog lu chari tundru khe re ma sawa zan che chong chepra kare na zan de malaba thoni zan labya lekin nimai da tuzi zong ja ta tandru sepa jimto da nywa jimto lep ko ro te zan je te se gar te mag yi chi se kha mari chora ge chai la mag yi chi se kha mar mag ko ran de ke lokta chin ke mang kari ten da chin je lep ko re sepa jimto da nywa jimto da te kom phin zo ke ko le te la o te re zan cha sa na zan se mag wa thap ki se ya da chama zai le 통보 니가 발라라 연적세네 다다른 가장 던저 망보 오리 조보 조모 발라라 연적세네 초랑의 코그 로바데게 초랑 가가가가가 라큰도 초랑게 될 야보세 근도 코기 초랑라 던저 라큰도 계자키 근도 저 파쪽 되는 통보 발라 쪽다 조보 조모 발라라 쪽어 초랑게 코 빼제와 침보를 근도 되나 코라 조모 인다른 도다 교랑 교랑 된다리 이제 조보 조모 바라 인 조위 다 도sol의 배 니바 첨보리 잔다 차마 되니 직접 세야 되라 배 니바 하장에 이제 제휴리 되는 양보가 직접다 좀뭐가 직접 어리다 양보가 직접도 책기 배규 니보를 깨자기네 대인 바도는 뭐 셈 떠터블이 좀 책세야 되라 책란 담총 미장 무슨 사버도송 다 좀뭐가 책에도 무슨 사버도 터블이데 참사진 양보가 책 조당이렇게 어린 가서 보라 요리 조자 전에 책 하장에 이제 야 교란을 비 뚜도도 사는위네 니보를 희인데 대니 바다드니 교란을 책 독자게 배교에는 다 두지 진이 양자다는데 오 그걸 든지 제가리래 사람도 걸리 샘들라 나토미 온도 걸리 직접 야죠래 든지게 직접 대그 뭐들 비 가디오이나 뭐데 샘데 메라조고 걸다 샘 돈의 샘데 도보 대인데 직접 같이 있는 저 마성아 jambo 나야다 그걸 세야다 비 찍찍라 야보 세야 돼 가서 다 주바제네 든지 세고래 때라 개와 랍침보 나가 누바 랍침보 되는 가 든지 대소라 대사라 빵자대 빵텀나 비 누바 침보 먹이 이치 침보 든지 랩고래 전더 참아 책종 안차르존에 따바르 깨자키인데 저 대다리 안차르 게브소 깨자키나데 안차르 독자는 로마리 잠부효 동메리 차당 깨자마보 땡상 해가래 산절 란 갑소다 니와다 랭와 니랭 차당 거 깨자마보 히 미촌이 메리 깨자마보 히 된달리 진짜 따뜻 또 차창마데 깨자가 조네 든르웨는 아차르세야 돼 데리 때라 빼 메시바기 니바 침보리 나가 누바 냠저다 뭐인게 이치 메제저다 땡 안차르 더소라 같이나 잡잡 버저 데리 나가 땅하가 먹게 이제 먹게 섬서야 돼 남샘 누샘 록다 다 납셈 세야 돼 저기저라다 마가버리 납셈 해나보 코나보 대야보리 찬로데 대 마찰리 탑시조 납셈 베 코나글레가 코바나보 내가 납셈다 누셈 세야 돼 매긴다 조보조발라 저기저라 간데 저기저라 누셈 세야다 누베셈 코든리 야 첨보 차 친이라 차한테 코든리 마차요 소보리 차나 코든리 마제 리인데 리 탑시위 고 야차한테 delta 차도는 진출다리 된다 누셈 누박셈 너는 셈 코랑게 너는 누셈 매 파로볼라 누베셈 같이 있는 시 마야바 록다 세야 돼 산지기 출라 록다다 라마라 록다다 때니 개와라 피온 요 말이 세칸다 대과라 니메 요 말이 세칸다 더서 대아점 힌도레 세칸다 때니 사마탑리가 통보 토기 히네 다다 다 조킹가 나네 히오레 렘데 오네 자네가 조킹가 하이 레벨 찬도데 렘데 고요 말이 저 힌도 거때 코란서 생활의 매와 찬도 거들이 대가랑 마차가 파르도 가라 든도 마레게 파르도 레점데 세야데 차키 차바 저성위 거들이 따와 남칼한 토나 주바 레점데 박세비 협고 송거를 뭐제게 렘데를 비 차키 차바 토니 초랑 따와 같이 남파나 렘데를 차키 차바 토니 송자 위탐나 되니 대하나 이게 핀토 첨본 용어 거들 된다기 다스 록다 메제죠 다 메게죠 보때 빵야나 되니 개와죠 효르든 요르차리 다 든루게 돈이 잡잡이네 되니 가서게 출은 냠니세야데 베케 첨보리 다때 가서 남주 가서 고온도 콜 튼도 콜 라마 마보고 송도 콜리 대인데 라마 크레 체크 말이 가서 까추 힌키 담마자 포모이나 망보리 저 따바 라마 장장 말이 여기다 여기니 남저 포모 망보리 레 페보나나 다다리 파자마자 포모나나 추바 넘버 다바리서니 망보요리 가서 하고 말이 베베 남저세야 수제가 하고 말이 추바 넘버 다바데 먹 하고야 빼깔레 카고요리 파테는 추바가 너요 말이 돼서라 파테는 통보다 님보다 가 야보 용니 탑히 요 말이 든지 먹을 자들은 가리라 간로올리시나 먹임바르게 추 침보라 짱게 달리나 나랑게 디 따뷰리 선축하를 위너네 마라 밥탑탑게 삼노 돈다 다 든루체는 팸도 짱짱 베베 남저 바오링 아소가 하고 말이 또 솔다 자와 니니 차기 차바게 돈이 삼노 돈 moja ponyam nana chupa number taba mambo ori tene tendru win nga so ge lemre de la thakin thaba lemre chesu me win tene samno tong tom na ten hale ba tene chupa namda cha kero
Oh, yeah.
gonda ta mambo
If you want to know more about the sufferings of samsara, please consult, Lama said, the long treatises on this subject, such as the explanations of the preliminary practices, many of which have been translated into English. The fourth of the four thoughts is the contemplation of karma. Karma, of course, means action, what we do. But in this case, it really refers to actions as causes and what their results are. Basically, what we need to understand to start with, and this is really the foundation of all Buddhist practice, is that what we do matters. Good deeds, good actions cause happiness. Bad deeds, bad actions cause suffering. If we believe in that, if we believe that our actions matter, that by doing good we will experience happiness, and by doing bad things we'll experience misery, then we will live accordingly. And therefore this is the starting inspiration for the practice of Dharma. If you don't believe in the results of actions, you probably won't practice Dharma to begin with, because you won't believe that it would have any effect. The greatest example of somebody who achieved Buddhahood because of their belief in karma is Jetsun Milarepa, who as a youth did great wrong, became convinced thereafter that he was going to be reborn in hell as a result, went into the presence of his guru Marpa, received his instructions, and practiced until he achieved a perfect Buddhahood. Jetsun Milarepa's example is incredible, because it was really through his belief in karma that he became what he became. And as for what he became, he achieved the same state of realization as all of the great siddhas of India. His lifestyle was so immaculately renunciate that even communists would praise him, saying, well, if you're going to practice that religion of yours, be like Milarepa. So Milarepa was inspired by his belief in karma. Now, basically there are three things we need to know about karma here. What are the karmas or actions to stop? What are the ones to start doing? And to what extent is everything the result of karma? There are 10 actions that we want not to do. There are other lists, such as the 5 actions of immediate consequence, which are extreme cases of those 10, such as killing your father, your mother, an arhat, drawing blood from the body of a Buddha or your master with ill intent, and there's got to be one other one, I can't remember it. Anyway, but these are relatively uncommon, relatively rare, although patricide and matricide seems to be occurring these days. But the problem we have is likely to be engagement in the 10 negative actions or unvirtuous actions. The first of these is killing. Now, there are two things here. There is what act of killing will break a vow not to kill, and then there is what is the result of actions of killing that fall short of that. For example, if you have, whether as a monastic or lay person, the vow not to kill, if you identify the target, you intend that target's death, the victim's death, you do something physically or verbally to cause their death, and they die as a result, if those four elements are present, then you've lost the vow. The vow is destroyed. But it's important to understand that even killing that falls short of that, such as when we take life unintentionally, is still killing and is still going to have the karmic consequence of what's called a life debt. So avoid as much as possible anything that might cause the death of another being. Now, it's interesting that a lot of people think that the only thing that will break a monk's vows is if they have sex with a woman. That's actually not true. A monk or nun can break their vows in any of four ways. By that act of killing, which had those four elements, by stealing, by lying about spiritual attainments, or by having sex. But we need to remember that those four vows, if any one of those is broken, the whole ordination, as people say, is lost. The second of the 10 unvirtuous actions is stealing or theft. Whether you steal by force, by stealth, or by deception, if you steal, it will have a negative result. The third, and this is the third and final unvirtuous action of body, is sexual misconduct. Now, sexual misconduct is defined differently depending upon whether you are a lay disciple, an upasaka, or a monastic. If you're a monastic, all sex is sexual misconduct. You just don't have any sex. And if you're a lay disciple, it is what we would identify as sexual misconduct, such as infidelity, adultery, and so forth. There are also four unvirtuous actions of speech, the first of which is lying. Now, to lie, you have to know that you're lying. If you say something that's not true because you think it is, that's not lying. But generally, there are ordinary lies and tremendous lies. The tremendous lie, the worst kind of lie, is, and this is the one about which we have to be the most wary, is falsely claiming superhuman abilities. And practitioners, including lamas, really have to watch out for this. Because if you start exaggerating any of your spiritual experiences or attributes, claim to have seen deities you haven't seen spirits you haven't seen, and so forth, then you're doing that. Typically, this happens when someone wants to charm donors in order to get more money or property donations out of them. So in order to do that, the person who may be responsible, for example, for building a whole temple or monastery and supporting a community of monastics, will exaggerate their own qualities in order to finance the monastery. That's a really sad action. It's not clever. It's really sad and pathetic. As ordinary practitioners, we can fall into this trap by being deceived by our experiences. We might be practicing tranquility meditation and experience something that we're not used to, intense clarity, an absence of thought, and mistake it for a state of enlightenment. Now, as long as we're mistaken, we're just deluded. It's not. The problem is there is a gray area where being slightly mistaken can lead you to exaggerate. And once you're exaggerating anything, that is the false claim to superhuman abilities. The results of this, well, there are many. There are four results to every action, as I guess, I hope he'll go through that. But one result of this is people won't trust you. You know, if you lie. People who lie are not trusted. The second unvirtuous action or negative action of speech is to cause disharmony. And this is when you try to break up a friendship or romantic relationship, business partnership, whatever it is, by going behind the back of one person and manipulating the other, such as saying, I know you like so-and-so a great deal, but I got to tell you, he says some nasty things about you behind your back. Or breaking up a romantic relationship, you know, going to someone saying, you know, he's got other girlfriends and things like that. This stings. Sixth of the 10 and third of the 4 is verbal abuse. Now, we think of verbal abuse as harsh words, using harsh words. But actually, Lama pointed out there are 2 types of verbal abuse. It can be very gentle. You can verbally abuse someone by intentionally saying something that you know will hurt their feelings, even though it doesn't look like it because you're speaking gently and kindly. That is insidious verbal abuse. And then there's also overt, using harsh words, yelling, swearing, or whatnot. Our words are very powerful. And it's very easy for us, all too easy for us, to hurt another person's mind, to actually break their heart. So avoid this. Always be gentle and respectful and benevolent. Use speech to help others, not to harm them. And that will cause your speech to become respected and powerful. And then 7th and 4th, we have gossip. Gossip is defined quite widely here as any unnecessary conversation that increases attachment and aversion. So, obsessively recounting the news, and so on. This can be very, very destructive. And it's very destructive, especially of the power of our speech. And like lying, it will cause people not to trust you or like you or want to be around you. And then we have 3 of mind. So the 8th and 1st is covetousness. That is wanting that which belongs to somebody else, because that mental state will cause you to do things to get it. The 9th is malice, and that is actually wanting to harm someone else. And 10th is wrong or incorrect views. This could be an incorrect view of Dharma, an incorrect view of and antipathy towards teachers, or also the incorrect view that there are no results to actions, that good deeds don't help and bad deeds don't harm. Now, we have to be careful with that latter one, especially as we hear very august teachings on Dzogchen, the Great Perfection, in which it will be taught, in which it will be said, ultimately there is no this and ultimately there is no that. We have to maintain the context. in which that's said. And that context is not available to us now. That's not where we live. About this, Guru Rinpoche famously said, although your view be as vast as all space, or as high as the sky, let your conduct be as finely attentive as flour, fine ground flour. Now, those are the 10 unvirtuous actions. If you stop them, you automatically are engaging in the 10 virtuous actions. The 10 virtuous actions are not doing the 10 unvirtuous actions. And anyone can do this. We should not think that that the careful attention to how we behave or how we act is uniquely in the sphere of monastics or lamas. Most people who live these kinds of good lives are actually hidden yogis and yoginis who it won't be obvious to others how well they are behaving.
Oh, that's that theory. Then the Tamji Lele Timba Zealand, so that Lekana Kare Sena, that the Koran Jison Tangi Yopate Nichin Ri Tangaso Mario, that the Sepa Jumton, the newer Jumton Las Mamboshi Yori. Then the Tasok Selenda or Seba Jumton Kare Seko and so Chiaba Tesoke, then also Tata May Yola only cups a teen Rebetek, Che Tonata, Ni Mamata. Then it Tendrike King in Mambo, Lem the Darte, so Chiabakan Napan Yenson. Then also so Vejata, Che Hosea, Teko, Che Remuchi, and also Tendrisecora, the New Jumton Secori. Then Diana Yink. Da reng di chokeri teni nga zo chama segar ta so ga da nga zo roba ya bo mni jo da ka si ni na roba dok ja sen jo bon da wa da roba ya bo mni jo da roba ni ya la pe me si ba roba ya bo ni ya la pe ka le kha won da wa da ta tun ru che Diana ye ge ko ma chang wa ji ja le gen de ge teni Zatsan Rana, Setelan Zimo Kona, Tonum, Gendo Golin, Zatsan, the Sea Mewa and Zimo Kona Tokyotan, Diana Yega Sat Zobota, Do Zobota, Sachole, Pe Chazogolo Yito Mon was Sachale, Jawalin Jando. That the Ruki Seba Jimton, the Mambo, he left Kayori. Then it that take Japan on the Ma, the ring dinner, some no time, and also Hakon Rich and Namaga, some no time in the Terry. Then it when the less say at the Karnagale, Kare say at the tea, Gis and Drunky, you batting us on Nijiri. Tapan door the Higana. Kare Sena, Dangasoke, Peri Chayana, Serma Topgyal, Nechiaga, and Deva Yongjo Mari. Nen Devgu Serma Reva Vena Yongjo Mari. Sound Park Karetam and Revet Certain Munka Yorva, Teanagiri, Nazoka Lake, Karnagale, Kare, Sapati, and Reva Tundriketsor, Nazola, Munkori. Then the lead tracking, Tapaga Goni, Samo Tantana, Pimisiba Kitchen body. Flopon lot of the song, Tony Repechi in a corner, the Shantatoka, Jumdre Samoyen, song. Then the Jumdre say at the Jordan River say at the Nazoka, Samotongan, Hot Lepaka, deeply, really deeply. Tony Tinla Gulela, Tony Job Tin La Gulela, Savomacho, Machudamita, Kanzadamita, Sola, Samo Tesites, Tongugina, oh, Taco Tombani Ridale, Tony Yabatin, Hako Togari Lela. Le Jumdre Taban, so Carre, you meet the Savani Hako Togomari, Nazo Tatan Dinan Zomdar, the lead Karen Suha Kori, Nazo. Sapuni, Satan Rimbon, Danelem, the Nazo Yam, the Chug Dolin say, Nanchug Dolin say, you about the lead, the Kiwangama, Suha Kotokori. Then in Ganda and then the Markaji with you here, the Chesoga Trebogan, the Chartea, the Meto Perianda, so Kiwangama Aranga Pala Caresega, you about the Lemre, the Sir Mancoli. And then around and the Kiwangama party Galik and Devogan, other Meton, the Sarter Tata Radio. Jaja Jarite, Mato, the tablet Tiwan and the Rao Mari, and the Meton, the Suti Okuna. Then do you let the track Tapa on call it. Then they let the tender watching the letter called Kanagale Carese and Dona and Sonra. Land Salaya Maman Cholaya Maman Simple Pombo Marking the Laman song. The led Karna Kare and the Sadola Tigo Sama, Chola Tigo Sama. So simple Pombo Tata and Della Rang Lepcore. They are not in Zamlin Ledger Sabazo the Tatak to Chundala. Sedu Lep Sapagan Driver the Semi Sapagan Driver Kiva Jim Mugovala. Lutin Daytola Lemdre Hasam Handle College. Then I saw he Yambak Tony, Hako Yambak Tony, Lemdre Hasa in your Tata Mando College. Kiva Jene, Hama Cheze Tata, let Tata Chezi similar as I saw Tampe Yori. Then I saw Hako Rezo, Hama Kanse Yoba, so Tata, Sama Kanse Batin, Jima Hako Rezo, also Sini Peta Tamjik, young your career in Naso Kieta, the Hokari Pug. Da arlati lok so mari kiwa samanga country sada zo lama le hyo delo le hyo kiwa ngomanga country yen re zo hyo yang ngong hi yu dom do tham ji ngong hi hi chona kiwa ngomang den rin do da kiwa samar chona re do erin da jien do kan do zo ne yang ma hi da den ri sin ke yo re de pe cha wa tham ji zo ne ne hi ko mari singa jie da san ji ge ti ge cha san ji kya ja ta ba chona ge zo ga nga te ko mari si 가르세나 저 레게와세나 간 레베 대와 용조리 제와스마 레메게와세나 간 레베 동한 용임바리 땡아랑 히히 가레 땡아 뭐망아 가레 하고 다다 나랑 레 가레사이다 스마가 가는 동아랑 랑가 람티노 나랑 하고 내가 제다 먹어 좀게 마버리 데 덴바리 사제게 송야레 데데레 레 든루베는 가서 용거리 데네 데 레데 저제 ngone tane ke jet salan thombor ke ban khadeng zelera sa namkani ya te sa ta nga so ke ha ma wona namkani phorga da tama rakho mari sa de ma thana bam de tama de na shur tene zem kole te na ye ke sanye korang kewa sama je ko na so ke le de to tene so ke le ka na kari se yo ba de tak ta so ke le de la men thop ko le men ko le ya te de lemre de la thakin thaba sam no to ne te ni ko nyamni ri zo to na pe ha leba ke tene nyamle ke tene yapon rokri ten de lemre de pe ki chenbo la zako de da nga so namba sanje be chu la.
Well, I can't talk as fast as that, so it's going to take me a little longer. So we'll probably have less than an hour. So the first topic was an identification of the 10 unvirtuous actions. We did that, so don't do those. Second was an identification of the virtuous actions. Those are not doing the first 10. And now we come to the third topic, which is how everything depends upon actions or karma. There are, broadly speaking, 4 major results to every intentional or volitional action. And these are the fully ripened result, the dominant result, and 2 types of concordant result, that concordant with a concordant experience and concordant action. Now, I'll try to apply these to each of the 10 unvirtuous actions. Killing. If you kill, the full maturation will be rebirth in a hell, the aggregates of a hell realm, multiple times for every time that you kill anything. That's the fully ripened result. The dominant result is that if you're born, when you're born as a human being, it will be in a very unhealthy place that will cause you to have a very hard time or possibly be in danger of violence. The concordant experience is that as a human being you'll have short life and a lot of sickness. Concordant action is the habit. You'll like to kill. You'll probably do it again. Stealing. The fully ripened result is you'll be born as a preta. The dominant result is to be born in a very, if born as a human being, to be born in a very, very poor place. The concordant experience is to suffer from hunger, poverty, and deprivation as a human being. And the concordant action is that you'll probably do it again. Adultery. The fully ripened result, depending on the circumstances, is either a rebirth in hell or rebirth as a preta. The dominant result is to be born as a human being in very, very dirty, disgusting, nasty places. The concordant result is to experience disharmony in all future romantic relationships. The concordant action is, you'll probably do it again. So that's the 3 of body. Then we have lying. In most cases, this is said to lead to rebirth in hell. The dominant result is to be in a place where no one trusts one another. The concordant result, concordant experience, is to be held in future lives as an untrustworthy person, and the concordant action is that you'll have the habit of lying. Causing disharmony, the fully ripened result of this is always hell. It's one of the, if you want to go to hell, that's one of the quickest ways to do it, most efficient. The dominant result is to be born in a place where everyone quarrels. The concordant experience is to not have any friends, and the concordant action is the tendency to do it again. Verbal abuse. Again, the fully ripened result is said to be rebirth in hell. The dominant result is to be in an unpleasant, be born in an unpleasant environment as a human. The concordant result is to be constantly, experiences to be constantly verbally abused by others, and the habit, and the concordant action is to continue to verbally abuse others in future lives. Gossip. Gossip primarily causes rebirth as an animal. To be born in a place which is filled with distractions and disturbances, to have nobody listen to you, anything you say in future lives, thinking it as trivial, and to have the habit of liking to gossip. And so you can extrapolate, Lama said, from these to understand how each of these work. Now, what's important to understand about cause and result with regard to action is it's very consistent. If you plant barley, you're going to grow barley, not rice. And if you plant rice, you're going to grow rice, not barley. So it never happens that good actions, really good deeds, cause you to suffer. It never happens that bad actions, bad deeds, cause you happiness. The actual work process through which karma works is extremely subtle and hard to understand. For example, Arya Nagarjuna said, you might figure out emptiness, but you'll have a very hard time figuring out how the subtle workings of karma. We can use logical analyses to prove, establish emptiness, figure it out, as it were. But karma is much, much harder. For example, I believe, Lama said, that the nice things that people put on that table in front of me, like the flowers and so on, are a result of my actions in previous lives. In other words, when good things come to you, like people put nice flowers on your table, it's because you've done good things in past lives. And most commonly, actions ripen in future lives. Occasionally they can ripen in the same life, but most commonly they ripen in future lives. But aside from knowing that in general, that good experiences good resources come from having done good things, it's very, very difficult to actually track it in a fine sense. So, in one sense, it's simple. In another sense, it's extremely subtle. The simple thing is that the results of our actions, as the Buddha said, do not ripen in the earth, in the water, or in the air. They ripen in the aggregates, the body minds of we who act. Sometimes people in Tibet, Lama said, will ask great lamas or revenants, those who die and come back, Delok or revenant, or other people known to have some kind of supercognition, for information about where they're going to be reborn and as what. It's not unknown. But there is a joke among scholars that you don't really need to do this. The Buddha already took care of that. Because if you believe in karma, you can infer from your actions where you're going to be reborn. So there's a saying, a colloquial saying that captures this. If you want to know what you were, look at your body now. If you want to know what you're going to become, look at your actions now. Your body, your aggregates, is the embodiment, literally, of your previous actions. You can infer much of what you've done in the past from the birth you took in this life. And if you want to know what you're going to be in your next life, look at how you're living this one, how you act. Are you doing good or doing bad? And that will tell you. You don't need a divination or anything else. The Buddha already explained this. At the same time, on the one hand, it's that straightforward, but it's also very, very subtle. And the subtlety is we cannot easily observe the connection, the link between action and result. Therefore, it's said to be like a bird's shadow. When a bird is flying very high in the sky on a sunny day, it definitely casts a shadow, but you can't see it. As the bird descends, flies down or swoops down to earth, its shadow condenses, and eventually the bird and its shadow meet up when it lands on the ground. The karma is like that. At the end, it's obvious, but you can't track it through the process.
Okay. 다 바자
Drill.
그 조송 때 얘나 책하게 줘야요. 책하게 마이나 때 뭐다 단다리서. 대인데 담변라고 더 나초 때 소글린차 야사 거르테니 나초 그 문주 사덕 선바탐지라 소글린차 소니 든르케게 레 코르주 요바케 토니 베레잖아 베 망보리데 얘나 소본도 좀 잡어 얘나 뭐 자가네 사오게 잡어서야래 정용으로 줘요래 담주 되니 대인데 디 잡어티 자 세테가 아마테가 사오고 그래 참다 저 버텔 저랑 지마 잡어리 kapsala 되니 저랑도 공네 초들이 이제 데 버가가 가디 잡어리나 삼데데 아마게 저랑 다다 잡어리 거나 리지요 말이 저랑 빠 더번에 혀가 말이 로본 로드 코니 소제리 되어 로본 로드데 내줘요 말이야 나 콜 산초 선바리아 저랑 거 점바상나 콘데 그래야 초파 정 그래야 돼 저랑 잡버리 그래마도 저랑 자데 용조 말이 람네 대고가 로본 로드 로바 점바상나 로본 로드 Then Yam then the Yodin, that Joranga get you, Jorango take yes on the Yond. They call a Raja Kati Yona, Lobon the Dover G matter. Joranga get truck, Raja Soli, Kong, Jiang, Nabjag, Conrunning in Yartsari, Nate Ju Tokamari, and a Zak Hatun, Drangbutemar and Butter Kong Sea, Soli the Taron Yarta Maria. Chora get Zaka Hanga get job and a kitchen, the Ritini Chora, my Shakari is on it. Then it's Zaka Hakela Jam, the Lobon of Tronsaka, Lord you. The tender which I get Lemdred and Corcori. Then I think Lemdred Mambo legend ever or it, the Mambo Hima Himando. The new check Leka Nag and Drevet and Gasola, one Trandak and Yonkori. Then the Leka Nag and Drevet and Yon, the Gasota. Katsina Zambule Kona, the Zonyata, Zambule Kona, Zonyajin, and Rev Zambunyo Lingijin. Tambo ni Jordan Mango and Revan Goje Yomari. Jordan go, the Tata Shantin de Wag song Yora, men the Pama Mazina, Sigba Pama Yoman Joras on the Junjona song. Me Koranga Pangona, me Koramapana, Sigba Lapa Siki de Pangoma, then the Tambo Jordan Pango, Tegori. Then the Sanjeka Demba Chungo and the Kumjong Power Sa, Sonya, Tonda de Terry. Then the Jordan go, the Tango, the Donhar Hits at the Kumjong Pango, the Chokum Jong Dev, they pound the Teninga so Tenico Chazogolo led the Dev the Chin, then the Tata's Kaduina. Mayagata, Tropo Yagata, Tropo Dogas on the Pangoya Yomari, and two Jondo gave a Tropo Katsina tea, Tendrigo, then the song or long or then the Karengota, the long timati, or that Tendrica. Dorna Trozambo Latina, Sosola, Pay Yabo Chayata, Trongo Nimba Latina, Soso Dogja Chandosa, Trozambo de Minja Dombondao, Kanti de Tamji Janada, Trong about the Tog Dombonda, Kanti de Tamji Landa, Sombanagi, Matama Dogjas in a Dobori zone, he go Aomate, Katsina gave a Tropotela, Degba Tropotela, Pang, Tela Pintona, Pimatona, Tijis of Mandangina. Take a leg, let the sea, let Magiva Lechatan, Sindro de Tini, a Kalekale Korkan in Rawa, the Carcanani Yuna, then the Carpog nail and two Carpog nail and two Carpog nail and two. Now you got an abo the chin, the Tini Carpocon and John Jori. They are not young Azoga to do sin, gave a letter Katsina. Drop Depele the Katsi in a pang, Lemdele Yichi Vigina. Lendele Yichi Zambo, Nis on the Donghar was a Hyandokor, Tazukoni Kubanai. Donghar the country Hyandosina, Tatang also Robo Tomo Palata, Robaga Palata, and Zambalan Dikantini, Donghar Mambo, Zewa Zogona, Kare Zogona, Tipa Latin, Yonkora. They Donghar Yonko, the Parta, the cut handle like a Donghar. That they cut handle like a Donghar. Led the his on the oh, then Kiwangamarang Larry, something later Hakosana, Donharte Lamsang, Yakarori. Donharte wed in the Pinton Jokoma Lamsang, Hyando de Pinkor. They might I neck country chicken and duck in Yonga, country chicken under indoors, Donharto, Donhato, Donhar Yonkor, Tropo Tromo Yaboro in the cart under the Donhar Handanage Yon, Hyando, so June. That is so giga then Doyoni Cha Yoyon, the Tendrika Soja Yatela, Soling Abjan Jargos only, Chatang Abja, Rami, Ni, Rami with some Nabjas are in Jargo, Tendrika Len Yongo,
Rungi,
associate giga. Then they saw you Prusan away. They saw giga Jumsi Gang Yomar. Trobo Tromo, Tombo Chana, Kiawang Aranka, Le Zambo Sagaleke, Deva Zambo Tramsong Galeke, Yabori. Garci Kala Tarsona, Naranga Lesi Gallery. Tela Donhar Yongo Mari, then Naranga Lesu Gallery, Naranga Zugarim, the Yin Parapog, Sutzak Zugama, Parapol and Zogazawani, Tunamia Zongi Mari. Narang Segalians and Kanadalone, Lezangi Caresian and Naranga Zugali, Naran Mendoleries and Samnoton, Nangala Samnotortona, Parapol and Zokso, Kogangala Dopo Singu, Kungala Tsingin Neng, Kungala Yaleng Zungu, Dokya Zungu. Tundu Samno Zawani and Matone, oh, Kungala Terrain Yalenzu Dobo Zungu, they Muma ngarang sega name ngarang the chornyong songa sam the golere ha che kosona donghar de lam sa de ne khane sem de lu khage chang gole dru khage ton de lemre la trai khata ba sam no tong ya de ke chen bori de ne son cham de ne yo de ne trawa de ne ka che yo ba de khyote tan cham tak da yo ge
That began with the statement, well, my time's up, but I have more to say. One thing that we need to talk about is life debt. You'll remember that a few minutes ago I mentioned that even if you kill accidentally, you still accumulate a life debt. And life debts are one of the hardest things for even bodhisattvas to expunge. To give you one of the most famous examples of this, there was a king in India who lived at the time of Arya Nagarjuna, and the king's queen showed her son some of the royal vestments and crown or whatnot, and he said, "Well, when do I get to wear these?" And she said, "Well, not until your father dies, because you won't be king until he is." And he said, "Well, how can I want to wear them now. How can I kill my dad?" And she said, "Well, his life is protected by the life of Arya Nagarjuna, who is free and is potentially immortal. But he's a bodhisattva. He's a really good guy. So if you ask him to give you his head, I'm sure he'll say yes." So the young prince had an audience with Arya Nagarjuna, brought a sword with him, and he said, "Would you please allow me to decapitate you?" And Nagarjuna said, "Sure." And the boy kept trying to decapitate Nagarjuna with the sword, and it just bounced off him. It just didn't do anything. And eventually Nagarjuna said, "I don't think that's going to work, because I cleaned up all the life debts I had connected with swords and decapitation by them more than 500 lifetimes ago. The only thing that's left is I do have a life debt from one life where I cut the body of an ant in half with a blade of kusha grass. Why don't you try that? That might kill me." And so the boy went off, got some kusha grass, and was able to easily decapitate Arya Nagarjuna with the blade of grass. Now, Nagarjuna at that point was a bodhisattva on at least the first bhumi, and they still can still have that kind of life debt. We need to understand that we will experience the results of our good and bad actions. That is certain. And we cannot, there is nothing we can do to prevent the result of an action except preventing the cause. As Shantideva put it in the Bodhicharyavatara, attempting to stop the result of an action once committed is as misguided as attempting to, well, I have to put it in different order, as sticking your hand in fire and expecting not to be burnt. You can't, the way he put it is, you can't stop being burnt without staying away from without stopping the fire. So if you engage in the cause, sticking your hand into the fire, you are going to experience the result. You are going to get burnt. So this is why the Buddha taught as the second noble truth, abandon the cause of suffering. We don't seek to abandon suffering because we can't control that present suffering, but we seek to prevent future suffering by abandoning the negative actions that are the cause of suffering. It's helpful in that light to associate with good people who are supportive of your doing good things. We have a saying that supportive companions or people are like healing herbs, medicinal herbs, and unsupportive, negative people are like poisonous weeds. Now, that doesn't mean that you should cruelly dissociate yourself from everyone who's not supportive. If you can help them, even though they're not supportive of you, then do so. But if you can't help them and they are unsupportive of virtue, then you may want to distance yourself. The message of all of this is we have to do as much good in every way as we can and avoid doing as much bad as we can. So in that way, belief in karma gives us control over our own destiny. It also gives us perspective on what we are going through. Belief in karma can help tremendously with grief. If you're going through a breakup or some other situation of loss, or someone is unpleasant to you, if you don't believe in karma, you won't understand why it's happening, and you'll blame others for your pain. But if you realize that whatever happens to you is a result of your actions in previous lives, you will not need to blame anyone. You won't obsess with what people say to you, thinking, they were so mean to me. Why were they that mean to me? Well, they were that mean to you because you must have been mean to them in a previous life. And this is very important, because this kind of context, this kind of understanding of karma can really turn us back from actions as severe as suicide. Because when people kill themselves out of grief, they cause themselves to experience 500 more lives of ending in suicide through their own life debt to themselves. So it's important to apply our understanding of karma to even subtle aspects of our circumstances, such as an unkind remark or something nice that happens to us, and recognize that these things too are karmic in nature. And then said, and now I'm done, exactly on time. So I guess now we can have questions.
Uh-huh.
The questions come from yesterday, and then they've been... I'm just going to go through them, and sometimes people went back and clarified some questions. So I've tried...
Oh, you mean you're going to read through them on your own? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I'm going to start. How do we deal with the need to do specific things in life? We have all responsibilities to children, to parents, work, etc., keeping a pure outlook, a pure view in everyday life compatibility.
How do we deal with responsibilities while keeping a pure view?
Yeah. Now, the first questions from yesterday, the problem is I didn't realize that once the streaming stopped, the chats went away. So these were sent to me, and I think there was more to it, but yes, it sounds a bit confusing. Should I go on to the next?
Yeah, because I don't understand it.
Okay. Okay, so this one's understandable. The impossibility of immortality. What about Guru Rinpoche, who is still supposed to exist somewhere?
The Kazan Lama ge song song, 제부 담바 예나양 시주레서. 이런 거를 너무 남양 심어서. 내가 말해.
오야 다들 gelin 라오자요 도르진 거르는 뭐지 찜치 도르지거를 찜치 지그 자와가 머리데 코랑 하모 볼라 페브리 마베네 페브리 다다 만도와 가서다 코랑 혀요 말이데 코랑 가서 자르지메 와도 마다 바르와 코랑 간에 겨우는 심불에네 겨우고
That's easy to answer. Guru Rinpoche has a body, Vajra body, that is beyond birth and death. But he demonstrated impermanence in that we don't see him around here anymore. He was in Tibet, and now he's not. He's in the land of the Rakshasas.
Okay. I found the second part to this question, so maybe now it makes sense. All right. So I'm going to start from the beginning again.
Please.
How do I deal with the need to do specific things in life? We all have responsibilities to children, parents, work, etc., while keeping a pure outlook, a pure view in everyday life compatible. On both conceptual and experiential level, I think the pure outlook eventually facilitates better decisions in my practical everyday life. But the fact is that being in the world and post-meditation, I find myself being pulled into the old patterns of thinking and sometimes lack courage. Yeah, that makes sense.
Da si momoyori de le labozona. Da so ke tata de lega leju don pugu chongju nami chongju de zo de damada mo zo gopa medmeron yore. De zo tsama zo shindu dagnang chongsu kanda yore. Da benang dagnang chongsu.
다때 다분하와의 장체나 대사 다나 장체나 다소소 코라 유연의 코라 종자 마을바 추접동케 남저 포모 망보 가장의 휴반나의 요리 데네데 보가당 남마당 다소 참마 소소의 종네 대당 환경아랑 그 린차 마수바 그 린차리 대연방아소가 하고리 찍니면 니니면 다낭 장고나 도서 참마 가서다 빠워당 그 빠워다 빠모당 칸로 보보모 차자 든르케가 다낭 장네 에도서를 그거다 제와다 협서 그 유삼네 까블레라 문제네 다낭 장 도서 그 류탐지 고군에 자네 그 예도마니 ཅංਖ르가랑 예리 도르지 그거리 그 도르지 송 도르지 톡 도르지 랑인데 내데올리 다다 녀몽게테서 덤로 거라면서 도서 참마랑에 주반 버저다 나게테를 협서 그 유삼네가 까블레는 마다네 다바람장 그 돈에 다낭가 거네 되니 냠레 존 든르베네 테 협서 켜탐나 대일 신차 사보 소소그 부진에서 년행 차단 신차 기억이 못지네 제와 첨보고 거네 다다 든르베드네 다낭장의 협수 켜탐나 되니 개반 점로 근도
There are, as I mentioned earlier, many yogis and yoginis who live in samsara but are unstained by it. And it is through what you mentioned in your question, their sustaining pure outlook or pure view. And such yogis and yoginis take full responsibility with loving concern for their families and their dependents, caring for parents, and so on. There are two main aspects to this. The first is that they recognize that the bond with the family members is a result of their own previous actions. But the second is that through their understanding of the view, they recognize that while we can't see this because we're obscured by our kleshas, your your male and female children, your male and female parents, are actually Viras and Dakinis. That is what they really are, because everything has from the beginning been a tremendous Vajra mandala. So if you recognize, for example, in the case of childcare, you recognize your children as Viras and Dakinis, you will serve them by taking care of them, ensuring their education and feeding them and so on, as an offering to Viras and Dakinis. And this will have two effects. One is to reverse the attitude of clinging, that is, of self-identification, these are my children, and so on, that is normally part, or can be part of parenting, and free you to love them much, much more.
And another part, and I'm not sure if it was part of this question I'm missing or it's another question coming on, but it's also my question, is how do you have conviction that you can change your life around and become a bodhisattva?
How do you have conviction? How do you develop?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is being kind of asked in different ways.
I'm not really tracking that question. Somehow my mind's not working.
All right, so I'll go on through other questions. I
Yeah.
think this question will come
You mean
up.
what basis do we have to believe that it's possible?
No. How to stop oneself from believing that you can't do it and being convinced that you can. You know what? Let me move on and
Yeah.
we'll get some. How to best remedy our anger towards literal atrocities committed against others and still feel genuine compassion for those who commit and relish doing these actions.
The jikten de la the zo the mark dong de na jenge ke de mi seju mon poyore. De zo tona tene sepe ke yul de la ninje chegerete seken de la control ongidos. De zo la control malonge ke ta kando yore.
Tata Tendru lots of young Tamna Yapori. Cares in a siege sinking you can hunch a leg a corner drop the other. Sinking la control Lama somewhat and Sage la ninja, Nikala ninja gongoli. Nikala ninja yori dolly, Karin ninja yori dolly sina, Nika siege the siege Tavaria ninja jackerite, sinking the siege licken, Drevetek, Nyari or the Jeholdria. Tela ninja tenda Jacko. Koranikale Zayde the dra, Zayde the Nime when the Drani Sokchata Taragatoni, Ningi Goyagaria, Tundruka Sano Tongo, Zayde Dravi, Zayde Nivi, Siga Jote Hata, Sinki la Controlan and Dracomari, Koranika leg to good salary. They do that Charanga tela control Jailana, control the top, control and the control the top the Nyara the Jackery, Pinto Kaya Jonko Yomari. Dig some no te tondone, Sepa Jumto, Yoma Jumto, Tata Hibanagi, they led the country and Bate Sanotone. Ta Narana Ninji Gori, Koranila, Sunkata Ninji Gori.
By considering the broader and long-term context of the events, when a person or a group of people commit atrocities, though their victims are often those who had a previous and who performed actions similar in their own previous lives. So it's easy to feel compassion for the victims of an atrocity. It's harder for us to feel for the perpetrators because we don't see or observe anything bad happening to them. But if you believe in karma, you will feel as much compassion for the perpetrators of an atrocity as you do for the victims. Because while the victims have suffered, such as being killed and so forth, the suffering of the perpetrators is just beginning. People who engage in atrocities are reborn in hell. And therefore, they are equally deserving of compassion. Now, the problem we have with this is that we tend to be reactive. So if we feel for the victim, we feel compassion for the victim, we automatically feel against, we feel hatred toward the perpetrator. But we have to think about what the results of that will be. If I get angry, filled with hatred at the perpetrator of an atrocity, my anger does nothing to that perpetrator, does nothing for their victims. The only person my anger affects is me. So if I get angry at the perpetrator of an atrocity, then I am in danger of going to hell. Which means that the event will now have at least 3 victims, more victims.
Okay. Any advice for practice that can be done post-meditation for reinvigorating a pure view, or is contemplating the four thoughts the best basis?
Kunzang je gomju de la dagnang chongju tso chegi enam dang de tso chena de tunzam so dagnang chonda kanda gogido dang yana lodenam pashi rang la jeto de tunzam so lodenam pashi rang samlo tanagajire gangajire.
Tate soso kanza ke nyamli kanetsa wana teri. Soso kanza ke nyamli kari seko na lodo namba ye lobyong ka kapsa nyamli seko na tandi kapsa la tse chek da nyamli si tansang ka kapsa la kang tab tabu go ne gyulam taso chasang lemre tegi la tsasong yapo seya de tansang ka nyamli seya de pe ke chimbori. Teni tawa tiin tosa teitsare jirdan tat lemre de songo ya yeryari de teitsarang ya chek sazo ka nyamli senro ko na tanja kapsala rekpa jinla phuni nyamni si gomya ta tansanja kapsala yang tia na yin ke namto kangsha khadar tinyam dan ro thapare ke nyamni zo thop gole te na ye jeram ka kapsa ne jeram zo sin da ko na tanja kapsala so so ke yadam la de kang thop thop ke ko sarkin temba sartin ta sam go goni nyamni che che de se ya ta tansanga kapsa ne nam jo phomo senu injecting tamji hiankanda nangyu semji tamji pawo pamo kanka rangyin yin samba ke ndekhi madar ba thoni teni tanha jang thabya de ten tak ke che ke te so so kangza nyamni krambala ra
It really depends on an individual's practice. When someone is emphasizing as the main body of their practice contemplation of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind from samsara, then during the session, they should contemplate those things undistractedly, and then in post-meditation, keep them in mind to the degree possible. In all cases, regardless of the practice, the careful attention to karma in post-meditation is very important. But for example, if someone's principal practice is a Mahamudra or Dzogchen, then in post-meditation, within the context of assiduous observation of karma, they should emphasize the liberation upon appearance or rising of thoughts. Similarly, if someone's principal practice at that time is the generation stage, then in post-meditation, they should emphasize the seeing themselves as the deity and seeing the environment and its inhabitants as the mandala and entourage of that deity.
What is the most helpful with addictions and distractions like the TV and the phone, and how to handle small mistakes in a good Dharma routine and not let them turn into larger, longer mistakes?
Small mistakes. So, what do you do about TV and the telephone?
That's the question here.
파츠 데 랑셔게 케샤레. 다 카시게 데 인터넷 데 텔레비전 데 타파 데 자네 데 don't joyat me pa takin dezo des langsho da wa chando wa de nyembo kanrago go do
Ta di nyimbo de la ngaranga thapki zo ke yo kapar thola hida keja hi magwa ke thapki de za de ke tu la mambo zon ro kando ta de la le zambo re ta ngimba nyin do ta kapar da la internet la le zambo re de la karen do zo de so so ke lama ya ga de ni chu ni ya tang ta thế mà bộ leo cần đầu internet na thì là thép ta ya ta chịu cái thép ta logic cái thép thì ta này give less hola bây giờ bọn đầu thép chim bộ giáp là con rôm một go thế mà bộ nhar một go le đục cha chơi đó ta để cái cha mà bộ cho mẹ vào cái ngã char khona cái cha mà bộ chỉ trâu trên lên với tít này ngã khá chun na thế anh ấy cái ta đàn cái cha khona khi này sanjar khi này thứ thứ thula tăng rồi đục cha yang thế nào đó thế nào thế rồi thế kale ngarang cái tháp chi zone pa giang rừng bốn rồi chỗ internet trên đó cái thóc thì na ya ta đi nghe khoa ta cái mình thứ thứ ngà mấy là chọn cho cần đó thứ thứ thula tăng cần đó thế rằng nghe tham gia xin đó này nghe lên cái hiểm bảo là gọi những cái gì sao thế giờ phải giang rừng đó khắp na ngã cái tự chủ để sao là khắp chế tự chủ để sao là nghe khắp mà chế ta lấy cái học khiêm bọn này nó cái lấy ở mà tôi cái tuần đó bên tháp chi zone để cái ngã là nu cần đó xem như là cái thì hạ quá là cái thôi này phải giang rừng đó ta này thế giờ là phải Mila da nga so nyo mo ba pha chang ma zo na gi te sa jang ring bo da yo ji na khona kale khona ki ti pak cha de yin ro ko le pak cha den thobo cha yo ma re nga so tra do re gi dar ni lo ma bo ma re te nga so ke thomi ni kon be nyo mo ba de pang thop ko le ya tra do re gi cha ni ta mo lo chup tha kha che ri ma to je ge re yo ma re de khok chia tra le re che da nga so internet so te pang ya le la wo le ka le tin ru kin na pha young ring bo da tang ra ta na ta tin ru se ya da thap ki ne te ya ki ma re
there's several things that we can do. I for one set limits on my use of my cell phone. I sometimes go to great lengths to avoid answering the phone or using it, or speaking at excessive length when I do use it. The issue of media such as television and the internet and how we use them is in part an issue of addiction, but it's also in part a question of how we use them. In other words, you can use a television or your computer or even your cell phone to watch and or listen to recorded teachings by great masters. You can download lots of Dharma books onto your phone or your tablet or your laptop, and they'll be much easier to access. You won't have to carry a heavy book bag on your back. So there's a question not so much of how much time we devote to these media as what we use them for, and that's important. If, on the other hand, you feel that your use of television, the internet, and cell phone is harming you, that it's somehow debasing you because you're using it to pursue endless gossip and unnecessarily repetitive news, information, and so on, and if you find that it's hurting you, then you simply distance yourself from it. Set limits. Do other things instead. Gradually reduce the amount of time you spend using those media. I refuse to use the word media as a single. It's a plural. I'm the last. How you use those media. And gradually the habit or the addiction will be overcome. Among our many addictions, our addiction to the internet and to social media is of comparatively recent origin. A couple of decades ago, we didn't have any of this stuff. So compared to our beginningless addiction to mental afflictions or kleshas, this one is not that deeply entrenched. So it should be possible to gradually wean yourself off the social media and so forth.
Internet na mate kami soso leka goro leka tundro ina kayo mari soso zo gorte don meli ke sanjor ta judo dan zambaleng judo tundro la jimsi kan yo mari te kan pin to mari soso leba la nu kari soso mela nu kari te nu ka dal ha ko na pa pa ne deve ja tralere gen de pa yo gomdin ten ti to la yoga ra jang zobo tambo ya bo longjang wi breathing out in we tani gomda ja sem koran lu chigi yone temo sem la tan de yu jina te te ke lobo la lunga yi sam na dang sang yi yong jo pe samba ji jo tani le ka la song na ka ble me jo tani ke pin to herti la so so pe pin to chembo yong thom korwa then the traveler again ke hertil no kan da nga so de herte zobo de dabo ja go ya pe za chembo ro nga so ke de kone mulurin chin ze hi de ko za chembo go re then the traveler again ke no ko de den si de nga se jin ya bo san sam yo tu za ri nga ngo ma dang bo di nga ra yen xiao song de la yen kan zhu xiao se na kan bu zha le yen xiao song de ne da I phong zo le lab song dang bo ye ba ne da de based on dancer that they union about lesson about SLS or Droba labs or Dumba labs or Taji some jen go down the Kajera like a Jang Jang you did. Ta some not on Dick Kariana Samgyok Mari Samsung call. A Bergen Samgyokum, the Lorella Sabare Tonga, Aranga Sama Yana Sam. Then long Homan, then Japanese on the day, Sam Yayamba, Mazok, then iPhone Starpa Lab Kando, Chu Arla Dior, Chu Manon Kanye, Tadong Chu Japan, the zone date, Mandani, Lamna Tendra. They knew Yana, the sort and then your top grade. That call it Jumsi Kamado, some near Charles on the Nintendo, Pan Sam Yagan and Sam Go token though.
Ngarang de tetso ke dranga yore de social de jepa derebe iPhone
Re jepa go ba jepa ta chuk zai ni ro.
Oh yes sir ngala de nyamchung chik de dranga me I don't know what
Re nyamchung ri nyar do pe ya bon do.
There another issue with computers particularly is most of us use them in our work. And so to some extent you have to use them in many occupations. What we can avoid, however, is unnecessary constant exploration of the news that harms our minds, things we don't really need to know, and entertaining endless idle curiosity, where you look things up and that you look something else up and then you look a third, and it just can just suck up all your time. These devices are not particularly good for our physical or mental health. It would be better to replace much of the time we spend using social media or otherwise on computers or watching television with meditation or with physical training, something healthy like yoga and breathing exercises, we actually harm our precious human bodies when we overuse this technology. I was initially delighted with computers and when the iPhone came around with that. But then at some point I started to get kind of tired of this constant upgrade. You know, there's a new one like every year. I don't even know. I don't know. So I asked him. He said he thinks we're 11, 12, 13, whatever. He said, and at some point I said to myself, okay, this has to stop. Apple is not going to stop. So I'd better stop. And I just stopped buying new ones, you know, every year. And people make fun of me and they say, you live in the United States of America and you don't have the latest iPhone? Well, I do and I don't. I do live in the United States of America and I don't have the latest iPhone.
How is moral discipline defined?
Sutramji ngo karere. Parot chimba trok na ne sutram je parot chimba. Tam sutram je lapa sutram karere.
다 수tum 세야 되죠. 다 가서 8% 쪽 나는 히어래 다 돈양스 린자데 저데 파라드 선바톡 히에크 요리 딘난데네 니바 수tum 제 히에크 수tum데다 송자르 와다. 가서 그 송자 첨라고 송자. 다 가서 수tum 망보 송야도 게랑 그 수tum 데자 게처 데자 게처 파마니 게랑 파마니 다 수tum 서야 돼. 나쟁니 난가니 용조 파천니 수tum 망보 송죠. 디 수tum 때 설 연的첨的설 연的送那가서 단 첨리 다 가서 주바게 첨 송야. 설 연的데门탐버소 파소 방도는 탐버소 첨 산제가 가르치야담 야요바데 교랑가 개완데 송잔데 송네 첨 줄라 교랑가 핀잔데 용거 유조네 되니 딱 가서 송요로 데 젠첨 산제가 젠첨 첨을 가서 야로 다데 디 송자들이 송자 다데 송자데 추첨데 명제견도 송나 되니 디나게 그 소소라 탈바다 탐진치부 공방그 톱지가 람데 다 사람 그런 말아왔다 요파라다 선바토라 람는 로고 레데인데 추첨도 쪼적데 디나니 가도 토리게 매 공파 토거나 추첨레 장 이미 송네 송자 추첨도 송네 토리게 mai jiwa ling go no zo chram de song go de chram de la chen ren chong som ren ba song jo da de ro chur gen de ja wa ge jian cham ya ya le chram de song da
The word that often gets translated moral discipline in English is shila in Sanskrit, and in Tibetan is sutram. Now, sutram can be understood, the breakdown of that word, in two ways. One way is that it is two translations of the word shila. Tsul meaning manner, appointment. I can't even think of words anymore. You know, how you behave. And trim means rules. Lama explained sutram as proper observance of rules. And so in that case, tsul would be a kind of propriety, that you do it right. So really, moral discipline is committing yourself to the right rules, to good rules. And it has a very important role, of course, in the Buddhist tradition. Among the teachings, it is one of the 3 principal trainings, and among the 6 perfections, of course, it is the second. The idea is that you adopt and formally undertake a set of rules for abstention, primarily abstention from wrongdoing. This can be as simple as 1 rule, like vowing not to kill, or as many as the 253 vows of a bhikshu. And there are many, many steps in between. Once you adopt a code of behavior, then the ensuing practice is to protect that behavior, to protect that moral discipline as carefully as you protect your own eyes. Now, one of the values of Tsotram, of moral discipline, is it is the only possible cause of human rebirth. You can only succeed in being reborn a human being by keeping some code of healthy moral discipline. One more?
Okay. Well, all right, I'm just going to go in. I am a physician. Maybe. I am a physician. Maybe at some point I'll be in the position in my Dharma practice to give this up and only meditate. But in the meantime, how can I train while working in the world? Is this the practice of the 6 paramitas? I find myself falling into old thoughts and patterns. I believe that the infinite variety of suffering of beginningless samsara. I was wondering,
Is this the same question as the physician question?
Yeah, but it ends up, how do I continue? All right, so from practice of Dharma, but continuing to doubt my potential to escape, that's the part. She's doubting her, or should we just move on?
Well, it's more than one question. So how can she practice Dharma while continuing to
Well, actually,
work
the whole
as a
thing
physician?
is, I see, how does she practice Dharma, but she continues to doubt her potential to escape? So how do you stop doubting?
Doubting.
Yeah, that's the key.
Da mo membare amchire. Member ke leka le shindo chu dampe chu kang tup tu be nyamlan zogi ore. De na ne leka lebe kaso tsor parota chimpa druk kam tup tu gongi ore. Yinang morong la tetsom zagi ores. Morong la ngane ke korwa de le drova ke nupa dao eyana tetsom zagi ores.
Tate tin korwa le trolik nipa yori kale kale. Mimba seya de pe ke chimbori chonang lega sale nang ji yakhu jiri. Ro nyamta gme zo nepa seya de nyamta ge ne thareng ge nepa ta ta yoreng ge nepa ta thareng ge arjo seya de ngaso bula tambe yori. Ta tepe mese ba sale ya bori. De na ni jambar chimju na ni mimba chimcho la na mi mimba chimcho zo de songen jamba la na mi so songa 다 뭐다 나차되게 날차도 뭐들 배 동할 숭을 흉침보 여러와 다된 진기의 민바리 대의 초나가 문제고 잡지 점바 서야데 대다 다 상세 노르지 점바제나 초래데 문제고 잡지 점바 서야데 거데 점바 남바 점바 나는 로거 여리 대의 초나게 고통 장마 장장 그 돈이 장조다 대하나게 그 예랭당 매바 그 돈이 Nepa dami, lapar the dapo mepa, lapar the pamjor mepa, lapar the nyamthak pen nepa, lapar the kebda muntru pen nepa. Tendrike nepa mambo yori. Tendrike nepa tela chu si the demba sorton tombaga goni. Tata sanchok sem, chuma kunzab sanchok sem, chuma maimba toni. Tetsam Meva Tony Chorang Ropa China Kang Taptu Kagoni Ropa Chila Teni Sanji Milake Tun Tapar Choran Sungjob Seka Yorila Tarto Sanji Milaka Compa Tong Niba Jinko Sanji Compa Tokari. Then the Topzi Zawa the careers in the Chorang Yimping Law Take. Yimping Law me Chorang Pecha Chibok Tonda, Randong Tondala, Choran Songle Tondala, Tazu the Nebatela Lega Ledina. Choran la Katsin Tarto Pink Yuna Mina Hakomari. Choran Tundrika Law Mewak Tony, Paropo Delange, Mone Trandagan din Nasa the Tratably. Nasa the thing Zavani in the Mewa exotably. Naranga Tundrika Yon Tobi Ho, Zokayan, Samnika, Hokimbokatani, Nubachimbokatani, Kolhotzamakatani, Lega Zukola. These Sanchok Semti top dege, Choran Sanjaka Compatogre. Tate Sanjaka Song Gallery, Zanyomar.
You definitely have the ability to achieve liberation from samsara. You may doubt this, but I do not. Physicians are regarded being a physician is regarded as one of the most virtuous professions that it is possible to pursue. In fact, in your work as a physician, you are practicing the 6 perfections while working. Especially, you're practicing the perfection of generosity. There are several aspects to generosity. Normally, we think of generosity as giving people money or food. But you're practicing a special type of generosity that's called the giving of protection. When you treat a patient, you are protecting them from illness. You are removing their pain, removing the causes of pain, healing them in every way you can. As long as your motivation is to help patients, free of partiality towards some and dislike of others, free of thinking of any of your patients as too funky or dirty to help, free of any preference for anyone, and especially being most concerned about the sickest, the most desperate, the poorest, and patients who are utterly unable to communicate or understand. If you do this, and your motivation is the desire to help, not only will you be able to help all those patients, but you will ultimately achieve the state of the Medicine Buddha himself. You are not in this for the money. You are in this because you want to help. That means that your motivation of bodhicitta will bring you to Buddhahood. And Lama said, I'm not making this up. The Buddha said this clearly in teaching about physicians. We find many statements about this in the sutras and in the Arya Manjushri Nama Samgiti Tantra.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. Good, very great questions. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it, sorry. Huh? Maybe next time. So we hope to see you again. Okay. So now the tamje zegwa ni to ni pe dana banze jen chega na je bala droba Sipen Zolen Rova Rova Yo Gewan De Jiwogon Sona Yiki Zozot Sona Yiki Lezonwe Damba Kunyi Dobar Yo Zwanjo Sene Rambo Maji Bana Jijo Ji Jiba Nyamba Meba Koni Kondam Bewara Yo Zimji Damji Deda Denjo Ji Ngendo Damji Dada Dombarash Sanjo Sumba Ganda Zaryo Ba Deda Ganj Molandra Ba Yo Zanje Reje Zen Dambe Ega Jargan Ya Danda Lengba Sabje Mezon Reve Sanga Ju Sige Zonda Jabe Traji Yom. Thank you, Lama.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lama. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Giving me good opportunity. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome. Oh, yeah. 다 들려버리 마서. 다 간들이세 어디서? 나서. 배. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.